to the Trinity Force Podcast. Yo, it's that Triforce cast beaming straight to your home. Grab a beer so we know Pone ain't drinking alone. Send an email, a quick tweet, just pick up the phone. Leave a message, hit the beep if you're a creep, watch your tone. Discuss the meta game, patch notes, whatever helps your stats most. Obi-Pone Kenobi is your last hope to snatch gold. So grab your headphones and join in the fun. We'll try and force in some jokes and some cringeworthy puns. Yo, we can make it together, people. Trinity Force Podcast. These boys are second to none. Now that's the end of the intro. It's time we begun.
Hello, everybody out there, and I'm going to click the right episode. There we are, episode 483. The Trinity Force Podcast is now live as I fuck up the live intro scene, because that's what we do after we have a couple weeks off, but we're back in full force. Six-man show tonight as Dom, Beaver, Mitch, Sean, and Marine all join us for this episode. Everyone in unison, hello.
What's up? Hi.
Great unison. I love it. You guys, thank you for sticking with us and listening to the podcast and working with us as we continue to progress through into the preseason. Before we get into anything else, patreon.com/TForce Network. 2 Champions Like podcasts a month. We had Lisa and Velkaz last month. Still working on getting some more out this month. I think Beaver is actually going to jump on. I didn't get a chance to tell Mitch today, but Shavana with Beaver. Hopefully this week.
Looking forward to that.
And,
that'll be fun.
Yeah, we'll try to find somebody else to jump in here and do a second episode for you guys. Of course, there's also replay reviews. Beaver's been doing a couple of those as well, doing really good out of the jungle and helping those fellow players out and trying to hit gold by the end of the season. Speaking of, only a few weeks left. What, two weeks left until the end of the season?
Yeah, just about 2 weeks.
November 7th, right?
Yeah.
I was casually starting to play and trying to climb, and then I just realized that I only have 2 weeks. And that's really kind of depressing.
Not a time to casually play.
I was 1-1. I was 1-1 D2 promos only a couple days ago, and now I'm on a tilt streak, so I'm D3 5 LP. So not making the right progress here at the end of the season.
As long as you stay in
solo queue in a while, and then Adam and I queued up yesterday. We won that. It was a grimy game, but we won that one.
I had to knock off the rust is what I had to do. I hadn't played in 2 weeks. But I had to play a solo queue game.
We're struggle bugging.
That's all right. We'll make it through. And then next season, we'll press really hard through this, as we should have some more time to play, hopefully, depending on how lives, of course, work out. Guys, if you also want to support us, BuddhaBoxers.com. That's BUDDHA Boxers.com/TForce. No code. They're just good, cheap boxers to wrap your nether regions in and make you comfortable as you sit through the workday. Don't forget BuddhaBoxers.com/TForce. We love those guys, and we hope you guys are enjoying that underwear that you can purchase out there for that website. So we're going to talk about some League of Legends as we roll into the next part of this episode, and I have a weekly challenge for you all. Everyone seems to be loving the weekly challenges, so we're going to continue to keep those going. This week, I want you guys to play, with the last 2 weeks of the season, you'll probably be playing solo queue by yourself, at least I hope so, and I want you guys to narrate your games as if you were a streamer. The goal here is to improve decision-making, because it'll force you to talk about why you're doing what you're doing and try to, rationalize that as you are talking out loud.
Yeah, maybe don't do that if you're not playing solo, because I think that would drive your teammates insane if you're on comms with them.
Just use push to talk. It's not hard.
Or that. Yeah.
Yeah, you could do that. I mean, it might screw you up a little bit to have to push the talk in the middle of your string of thought, but
it takes 5 minutes of one game to totally adjust to push to talk. It's not hard.
No,
I think that one of the things I talked about when I used to do replay reviews was defending decision making, and this is a great way to try to do that, or at least rationalize it in your head. Because if you can't determine why you're doing something, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it. Why did I move up there and then take that damage? Then maybe you've realized it. Who knows?
Yeah, no, that's a good point, because it'll be really good for laning phase, where you can say, all right, well, I'm going to walk up here and hit this now, and this is what's going to happen after I hit this CS, or, and I'm going to wait until some extra XP, and I'm going to walk in and I'm going to trade. If you can talk through it and you can try to rationalize why you're doing the things, I think you have a better opportunity. You have a better understanding of why you're making those trades or doing what you need to do throughout the game. And even if you only do it during laning phase, it's going to really help you out.
If you find yourself making decisions and then something bad happens and you go, oh, I didn't know they had this, or oh, I didn't think that was going to happen. It's then you kind of made a bad decision.
Mm-hmm. If you could take it a step further and then like actually have a local recording and go back and watch it like a replay, you could probably learn a lot and
Actually
fix
play-
your mistakes quickly. We lost
That's all right. He'll come.
He should have said he said the escape word and just immediately got kicked out of the room.
Right.
He's coming back.
Welcome
Don't worry.
There we are.
Yeah, Tom, don't say that word. Whatever that word was going to be, don't say it because that word kicks you off of our group chat.
It's the recording. It's the recording program.tv.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Don't say that.
Plays
Well,
it lets you like it'll record your own audio and everything, so you could in theory just go through the entire game and then go back and watch your entire game.
Yeah, it's perfect. I like this. I like this weekly challenge a lot. And so I hope you guys enjoy it too. Let us know how it works out for you. Feedback at trinityforcepodcast.com. I guess this discussion topic was something these guys have been talking about in Slack, and I haven't really been a part of it, but Marine has some strong feelings about this next piece as well. And we want to really talk about discussing item abuse and what we believe that Riot should be doing, or how it should be balanced in the future. Because a lot of times Riot will just throw an item in the game and they won't make it specific to a certain type of champion or whatever it may be. And I think right now the general consensus is the Sterix gauge change is the step in the right direction, but I'm going to leave that open to the floor for anybody who really wants to start discussing this.
I just want to talk about the history real quickly of Sterix gauge, just to put the point into perspective. So basically it was introduced and it was like a fairly decent mid-game, relatively inexpensive item for melee bruisers with high base AD, but because of the cost and because of how the defensive property of the item worked, all these AD carries were picking it up, and it was like the anti-assassin item instead on a ranged class, which was like way far and beyond like the total opposite of who the item was intended for. And for a long time, the item wasn't good because they had to nerf it down to where the AD carries weren't picking it up. But by that point, it wasn't worth it for the melee characters to get it either. Finally, Sterix gauge is in a good place, and they've realized that it basically can't be as good as it needs to be without the melee-only properties. And I think they just need to take that same approach to more items in the game, and they've been kind of hesitant to do that. Like, even masteries in some of the keystones are not as good as they could be on certain characters, because like the relative strength is too focused on trying to be balanced for everybody when some of the characters are just so drastically different.
The current one that's getting abused is definitely the AD carries purchasing Relic Shield to just further increase their support partners' bonus gold during laning. And again, I think that's one that would be really easy to fix just by going to melee only. People are going to be quick to say, but then you're totally screwing Thresh. And I'll be like, yeah, maybe, but Thresh already has an advantage in lanes in that he has a ranged auto attack. And all of his contemporaries otherwise are melee attackers. So if they're going up against Thresh, like they kind of have to suffer his ranged auto attack. And so if it really comes down to that, then yeah, Thresh is paying a price for having that ranged auto attack and everything. And given everything else that champion gets to do, that's really okay.
Well, it's better overall for game health. Beaver, I'll let you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say this sort of leads into a bigger point, which is Riot likes to first and foremost nerf champions before they touch items. And I don't always agree with that, because what will happen is metas are first and foremost shaped by items, as we can see with Ardent Sensor right now. That's the currently the most popular one. But before that, pro meta was it was basically all about Locked of the Iron Solari, when it used to give an AoE like an aura passive. Things like Blade of the Rune King when it was dealing 8%, Devourer when it was good in the jungle. And Riot's first response is usually to say, okay, who's abusing this item? I'll just talk to Devourer a couple seasons ago. It was Shyvana and Master Yi. Udyr. Okay, let's nerf those three. And see if... There were more, but those are the main three. And it didn't quite work. The item's still good. Let's nerf the item. So now the item's nerfed, and those champions are now basically unplayable because they've had their base stats or some base damage removed from them. And now they can't clear the jungle. Same thing goes for AD carry with Blade of the Rune King. They nerfed Lucian into the ground, and now you can't play him as a AD carry anymore. Sorry, you go ahead.
A piece of that too is that they'll nerf a champion and then realize that an item is a problem, a la Devour, and then a champion's been nerfed, then they nerf Devour, and the champion is way worse off than they were previous to both changes.
Absolutely, they get like a small peak in the spotlight and then they disappear forever. And I get it as like a game stance. It's easier probably to do that because you want to make these items work. So you just try and nerf the champions first because that's easier to do than to change an item, which affects way more champions and then affects the game more. So if they were always tweaking items, we'd have even more flux in the meta than we currently do.
The one time that I thought for sure they were gonna like gut some heroes who didn't deserve it was when it was the crit mastery. I forget what it was called now. I think the name is different. It's not.
Oh
It's
yeah,
Wasn't it?
Dude, I thought for sure Tryndamere and Yasuo were gonna be like the worst heroes in the game, just because they were abusing it like early game. But thankfully, they actually changed the keystone completely, and they avoided nerfing the champions that time.
Well, something I was thinking about with items in terms of balancing them around champions, because we have obviously the melee range is what we're talking about now, but way back in the day we had the spirit jungle items that I think got picked up for a little bit on laners, and they eventually changed that to say, okay, only smite takers can end up buying. I think Hunter's Machete and like eventually Talisman, and I like that Riot is willing to do that. I know that there's not another summoner spell that really like that you could base that around. But I think that maybe come next season they might say, before they were saying we don't want to make the game too complicated for new people to jump into. But at this point, like anyone who's playing this game with any sort of seriousness, like knows what's going on, knows that like if there was that kind of change, they'd be able to adjust to it. I think you'd be okay if like more things became melee only or range only or somehow based around certain types of champions a little bit more. I'd like to see a bit more complexity come into it than just, well, we want to be accessible to everybody.
Yeah, the only problem, I mean, obviously I made a point, but I'll make a counterpoint to my own. So items always define the meta. Like they're the number one thing that does it. And there's always going to be champions that are better at using a certain item than others. So one example would be Edge of Night, that maybe 6 months ago, something like that. The item controlled the meta, so the best characters were the ones that could have used it the most. So they were like Pantheon, Quinn. I can't remember anymore. Todd. It was a top lane character. Talon. Yeah, any of those assassins. Yeah, and that item even start to leak into the bot lane. You're right. So instead of when it's such a widespread issue, sort of like Edge of Night, Devourer, Ardent Sensor, I think they have to realize that it's the item that needs tweaking and not so much the characters first.
Well, I do want to play a little devil's advocate for Riot in that. I know they have a playtest team. I know they're bringing in master level players, high diamond level players to help test things. I know a lot of those people have gone over to work in the playtest team. So Tyr, we always bring him up. He's it's a challenger player. He's challenger flex this season, and he's on the team that fishes bugs and tests the playtest team essentially. What he's on. I don't know, but you get the idea. And there's only so much that Riot can actually do, regardless of what everyone's telling them, because they're looking at all these stats. I know a lot of times everyone's screaming such and such is overpowered, and their internal stats from the millions of games that are played say it's not actually where it's at, and so they can't go in there and fix the item like we think they should be fixed, because they can't play test it like we see it being play tested. They can only look at stats, but stats don't necessarily tell the whole story. How many times have they released new items and then suddenly they're just like ridiculously overpowered, and you're assuming Riot is going to these meetings and talking about these items and talking about these pieces. They don't want to knee-jerk change something, and they've mentioned that. They would rather tweak little things to try to figure out where they're at. When we're talking about this, I wish we would have had kind of like this conversation a little further forward. I'm going to have to go back and listen, because Ghostcrawler came on the show 3 years ago, whatever, and we had mentioned like Elise, she lost 5 base movement speed, and then everything else got nerfed, and we were wondering why she didn't get back, and he had a really good reason why, and I think it was basically the internal stats said she doesn't need that extra move speed because she'd be too powerful with it. And it's not something that we don't see. We can only go based on how we feel, based on how our games are being played.
Well, I believe a piece of that too was the change to the AP jungling item at the time, giving move speed, and the amount of move speed that she had base in her kit with that was too much based on their internal stats.
Mm-hmm.
But that's something that, like, you know, we as the public wouldn't ever really be able to see anyway unless we had access to that information. We only have access to a limited amount of internal stuff as it is anyway, you know.
Yeah, but whatever they decide to feed us through their API.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
you're not gonna see the data on something that's not changing, because those patch notes would be crazy if it said we are not changing this champion's so and so because of blank, and that would be so bloated at that point.
Well, I mean, we, as a community, we're actually pretty blessed when it comes to how Riot communicates. If you go and look at how Blizzard talks to the community, a lot of times, specifically like Hearthstone, they just now, after how many seasons, started giving patch notes.
Finally, patch notes, Steve.
Yeah, like actual patch notes that told you shit that was changing and why it was changing with numbers and everything. And it took them fucking 3 years or whatever it is to finally give us that. And Riot has been doing that for years and years at this point. So we really, you know, we don't get to see the forest through the trees when it comes to all this, because we've just been so blessed with Riot giving us all this information.
And it's one of the reasons the game is so much fun. It's always changing. They're always putting out patch notes every 2 weeks, and that completely changes the game state. Well, not all the time, but it's constantly changing, and that's what makes it fun. When games are stale, like Overwatch, the meta's been the same for a year, and it's no wonder no one wants to play it anymore. So, the only thing I'm complaining about is basically when they got heroes, and then nerfed items, so those heroes are unplayable. I just wish they didn't take so long to bring them back to their previous state, or at least give them a little bit more power, so they're not unplayable.
There's also something to be said for the community's kind of unwillingness to really look for things that will beat what is otherwise strong in a meta. It's kind of tricky with Ardent Sensor being so good because shields don't have a counter. I mean, the counter to shields is deal more damage and everything, but that was the whole idea in the first place. But like healing or tanks or you know, assassins, all these things, there are different ways you can go about beating those types of really strong champions. But the community tends to think, nope, I'm just going to play the assassins or play the tanks or play all these other things because those are what's really good right now. And so it's sort of like, yeah, items can be an issue, and they certainly do get abused at times, but there are plenty of cases where it really is just the community's unwillingness to sort of look at the field and say, okay, well, this is strong right now. This beats what is strong right now. That's what I should be playing.
Well, with
Like
that's one benefit.
Getting a lot more play.
That's one benefit, like, that used to be discussed when people would compare League and Dota from the get-go, because it used to be that Dota would get like a patch once every 6 months, and it was just like, hey guys, you better deal with shit and learn how to beat stuff that's popular and innovate in order to do that, or otherwise have fun bitching for a really long time.
Well, so Riot came out and said, I think Ghostcrawler came out and said for him that they're considering changing how they're going to be doing patches next season, with having, what was it, like one major patch a month and then a bunch of little small patches in between, but still the same number of patches with 24 throughout the entire season. And I'm thinking that may, hopefully, I'm crossing my fingers that fixes the issue that Dom is bringing up, because we saw support Ziggs last season marksman Ziggs start being played.
ADC Ziggs.
Because, you know, marksmen were in such a bad place that now people were trying to innovate, and we had a lull in between the patches, 3 weeks, whatever it is, so people finally got a chance to go down there and start playing with something and make it better. And hopefully with like smaller changes that lead up to one big patch, there's more incentive there to try to play around what is currently going on in the meta.
It's just it's understandable. And then those small ones they can tweak, like at the height of the Ardent Sensor meta, the answer to Janna was banning her. So when that's the only option, it's a problem.
And it's not fun. It's not fun when that's the only option.
No. So there is counterplays to, like, basically Enchantresses outside of maybe Janna at the time. Like, you can see it in the Worlds. People are picking these like super greedy scaling comps like Kog'Maw and whatnot, and then the other team will just play hyper aggressive and try and crush you. So there's always counterplay, but you just have to sort of find it. And if you're not good at finding it yourself, that's fine, because I mean, I'm not very good at that, but I just look to people who played the game more than me to help me find it, and that's how we should move forward as a community.
It's difficult to like go into a solo queue game. I understand this is somebody who is mostly playing solo queue right now. It's difficult to go in there and say, I'm gonna innovate, and your team says, well, why are you picking brand? We need an ardent sensor. This is the ardent sensor meta. And it sucks, because I wish people would be more open to that. Maybe it's easier at higher elos with people maybe understanding why something would counter something better. But yeah, I think that if somebody picked up like
Support's a bad example because like Beaver just said, the counter to ardent sensor and Janna is just banning it. Like that's it. There's nothing else you can do because shields are so good, and the only counter to shields is just deal more damage and everything. If it was healing, if it was only like the Sorakas and Sonas and Namis that were being really offensive with these items and everything, the counter is Executioner's Calling earlier than you normally get it, and people would just have to adjust to that point, and then there's parity again. But shields are a problem.
Yeah, and with something as safe as shields, it's pretty hard to screw up, honestly. So getting coordinated team aggression is often like hard in solo queue. I played a game the other day, and the enemy team picked a super aggressive bot lane. It was like Zyra Draven, and I had a Tristana and a Soraka, and I just camped bot lane, and then we won because they couldn't get ahead. That's it, and that was the end of the game. So their plan was awesome, but it's hard to execute if you don't have your team working around you.
Kind of reminds me of I don't know how many of you guys played StarCraft 2, but in some of the metas in StarCraft, there's like it's kind of like that ticking time bomb, like you guys are talking about, like the scaling up, and it would basically come down to like, well, if you could execute this like very specific strategy and you could pull it off at like the right time in the game, you had a small window to win. But otherwise, you pretty much just lose any hope after a certain point. And it feels really bad to be on the receiving end of that. There's a lot of characters in the game right now who just cannot deal with the really oppressive, protect that AD carries. Like supports are just insanely good right now. AD carries are really good. And and tanks are strong. You have a good front line, but if you're not one of those three, if you're not an AD carry, you're not somebody who's like working to help support your AD carry right now, you pretty much just fall flat if you didn't get ahead.
Man. I still don't understand why we have plus shielding and healing power in this game. All of the champions that use it were doing fine without it as a statistic in the game. Like they were fine, and it got added, and all of them are. I mean, except for I guess Karma, but the rest of them are way, way, way better than their contemporaries in the role.
I really wanted to like posit some of you guys as like a maybe fix for it, and I'm not sure if you've talked about it or if it might be too strong. What if Grievous Wounds lowered shielding amounts?
I think Riot said they didn't want to do something. There was a reason they didn't want to do it. I know that I don't remember. I can't answer the question. I wish I could. Because I know they don't want to put like an EMP into the game, right? Where you just disable all shields in an area. There's something. What is the next item they were going to create? What was it that it lowers the amount? So I think it might be a Grievous Wounds for shields. I can't remember.
I think they didn't want that strength to be on the same item for shields and healing.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's what it was.
There are also so many more shields in the game. There are so many more shields in the game that basically just becomes a must-purchase item for specific roles or classes or something. Whereas the amount of healing is really, really low. Nobody's buying Grievous Wounds items just to deal with the summoner spell heal. So you're getting it if you're up against Vlad and Mundo and probably Swain, and then like 5 enchanters, and that's it, really.
And Morwick and AD carries.
Yeah, I mean, but still, it's still like, are you getting Grievous Wounds to deal with AD carries? How many people are really doing it?
You get it.
Sometimes you have to.
You get it from Bramblevest or Thornmail now.
Yeah.
Top laners do, and everyone's rushing that.
It depends on the AD carry. Some AD carries just kill you in 3 shots, so it's kind of a waste.
Mortal Reminder is still a viable choice too on certain characters as well. I mean,
I think they'll probably. And preseason, I think, is going to mess with us a lot. Like they know that shields are an issue.
I agree with Dom though. I think it's the masteries that really push it out of proportion.
Yeah, I mean,
Wind Speaker's Blessing, and you remember when what was that item? When the AOE heal?
Our Redemption?
Redemption was like meta, and you'd build it on every support, even if you didn't have built-in heals, just because it was a busted-ass item. And then you buy
put it on some junglers just because it was not like. I mean, you'd build it on
I used to build it third item on Warwick
Ivern.
because you can
He's
also
still
Yeah,
building
Ivern was huge.
But all the supports are still building it like third item. I mean, they get Ardent Sensor and then their Sightstone and then Redemption.
Since Ardent Sensor is increasing the healing on AD carries, and that's like one of the problems right now. Like, doesn't it make sense that you would want to get Grievous Wounds to try and hit the AD carry with that?
Well, it's not anymore
it's
because they don't get the
increasing-
life steal anymore.
It's
off
not
it.
doing lifesteal anymore.
No, it does damage. It adds damage.
also. Yeah.
It's increasing insofar as they get more autos up, and if they have lifesteal, then they're going to get more
I must have
hits
missed
with
that.
lifesteal.
Right.
But-
That was so right now the world's meta 718 is old Ardent Sensor that gave life steal and attack speed.
That's right.
New Ardent Sensor
Yeah.
gives it gives extra damage to both people, the support and the person he uses on. Which is the reason that Janna is busted OP no matter what state Ardent Sensor is in, because she can give it to every single person with her heal. So yeah, that's
Janna's sort of in a class of her own though, because she was good before masteries were crazy, even back in like season 4 worlds. Best character.
Even
She
like
has-
season
she has
one,
so-
dude.
I know I didn't play that long ago, but she just has so much utility. Yeah, season 1. She's
She's
been good
got-
her entire time in the
she's-
league.
Yeah, she's
got
always
the,
been good.
Retroactive season 1 skin.
Yeah. Which is honestly my favorite Janna skin. It's the best skin of that group. It looks so good.
not the Hextech. Which one? The Championship Janna?
Fnatic Janna.
Oh,
Fnatic,
Fnatic.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they were season 1 winners.
right. I don't like the Fnatic skins. I have a few of them.
They're
Janna
not very
one's
good
awesome.
looking, but
Janna's looks great.
They're too
they
skinny.
look like jumpsuits,
Well, I think probably we'll end that discussion there.
pajamas.
with the item abuse. We'll see what Riot does here moving in the preseason. I know a lot. Probably we're just kind of like old men screaming at the clouds right now. Just wait and see what Riot changes.
I don't know. Everybody's screaming and complaining about Ardent Sensor right now. This is not a new topic here, but it's just sort of Riot has been surprisingly inactive on dealing with that item, given that literally the entire world is watching the best players abuse the shit out of it, and instead of doing something about it, we're all like continuing to deal with it and just having less fun as a result.
I wonder if they thought that if they dealt with it too efficiently, that people would be like, "Oh my God, Riot! Why did you change the meta right before Worlds?"
I agree with Todd. Like last
And we have done that. We've said
I
we
like
complained
that
about
more.
that last year.
I like that more because it's like, okay, so they changed a whole bunch of shit. What
Let's
are the
equalize it for
pros?
everybody.
But then something else is going to be busted, and then everyone's going to complain about that. That's the way it will work.
Yeah.
As the pros are figuring out how good Gangplank and Fiora are and all that
Yeah.
shit.
2 years ago with Darius, and suddenly he sees all his play and then gets nerfed.
Mordekaiser's must ban.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we've seen that happen, so they decided to stay away from that this year. Well, let's move into some listener questions, because we have received a lot of those over the last few weeks and haven't really had a chance to get into them. And we got a full group tonight, so I think there's plenty of people here who have some opinions on your guys' questions. So Drenier writes in, why do you think nobody wants to play support, and how does it get fixed? Autofill seems to worsen the problem, just embittering people who have to play support.
I'm
It's
like
more
constantly
fun to-
playing support.
It's
I like it
fun-
more right now for climbing.
It's more fun to kill people than it is to keep people alive for most players, I'd say. That's the reason why they don't want to play support.
Oh,
That's
shit.
accurate.
And there's no good way to fix that. Like you fix that by making more champions like Rakan, I guess, but Rakan quickly becomes not unique if there are 4 more champions doing the same type of stuff he does. So
Brand
I
is
mean,
pretty broken. He can just stay broken, then you just play Brand. You just top damage charts as a support with.
yeah, there you go.
There you go. Boom.
Or try
Or Zyra,
Blitzcrank.
you can top damage charge as Zyra. It's pretty easy to do.
I think Brand is like #1 reason I've been losing games lately.
This is not even like the answer to his question though. How to fix it? Make more champions that destroy people in lane and put them in support.
Well, that
How do you make it more appealing?
It went along with Dom's point though that like people
Yeah.
don't play support because they don't feel action oriented enough.
I mean, support has some
I
of the
think there's
best
also, like-
itemization in the game, which is also it can be hard to do it properly, which makes it kind of fun, to be honest.
I think there's also a little bit of a issue of a lot of people might not know how to ward really well, and if you get that extra bit of pressure on it, saying if you are the main, I know everyone wards now because this isn't 2014 and we don't have trinkets, but maybe that extra weird pressure comes into play. I don't know. I have no problem with it, but I also played support for, I don't know, 3 years before the season.
But how do you get people in silver and bronze to like support when they don't even look at the map in the first place?
You can't.
I just don't think there's an answer to that at a like a low enough level of play.
The satisfying parts of playing support come around the time when you actually hit gold. And it's just because the way the landscape of the game changes, it starts to reward things that you can do well out of the support role that aren't as easily done in lower MMRs, or your team doesn't appreciate nearly as much. And that's the unfortunate reality. But it's a team-based game. There's always going to, like, you know, the way the economy shakes out within the game, like there's always going to be somebody who just doesn't have the gold coming in, so they have to figure out how to be useful other ways, because dealing damage and killing people is not going to be, you know, what that person can do.
Well, you don't. You can't fix it. There almost always has to be somebody with low gold income in the game, because if you don't, suddenly that fifth person who's receiving as much gold as the other laners is now no longer a support character. He is a damage dealing like Brand, right? And then you make those champions get everybody else gets put to the wayside, and now everyone's playing the really aggressive champions all the time. So you have to keep, with the way the game is built and the way the champions are built, we've come to the point where there has to be a support role and there has to be a low income gold role.
And if you introduce items to try to bump up the resources of the low income role, then all of a sudden all the laners are going to start abusing those items. We've seen that happen how many times? We're seeing it happen right now, but for different reasons.
Right.
They've gotten better with it, and I think one thing that helped this season. I know that Coin was by far the worst one to start the season. It didn't get better when that elixir of level up or whatever skill point came into play. But the change to like see the gold you were getting when they had the coins show up made it feel a lot more rewarding, as opposed to Spell Thieves. You could tell when you're getting gold. Relic Shield, you can obviously tell when you're getting gold. This was like it was. You could understand when you were getting it, as opposed to the ambient gold gain, which I think was very boring for people for a while.
It also gives your opponent something to do there, where because basically if you can get them on the retreat, then it's harder for the support to go up and collect those coins, because they're always going to spawn around the waves and you're pushing towards them. And that's sort of how the other two items work anyway. Ancient Coin is still the most passive of the three, and it's still harder to abuse that, but you definitely gives your opponent something to do around that now. Like, it's not just free money for being there. Mostly free, but not totally free.
Well, let's move on to the next question, because I think we beat that one into the ground. I want to call him Gojira, but it's like Gogra. That's how I'm gonna pronounce it. You're the yogurt of our podcast today. Gogo writes in, I struggle against really aggressive top laners like Darius, Volibear, Garen, Kled, and even Heimerdinger. Right now, my answer is to just play back and passively farm under the tower. Even so, they have such strong kill pressure that they just dive and kill me without reprisal. I started taking exhaust against them, which helps, but are there any tips to help me in those matchups or champions I should pick up to counter those types of top laners?
I'll qualify this by saying he calls himself a Yorick one trick, but the context of this question sort of sounds like he's willing to. But the content of the question sounds like he's willing to pick up other champions here, so that's why I didn't include it.
I guess I would jump in and say that against Darius, Volibear, Garen, Kled, well, let's take Kled out of the equation because she's just broken. But like the other guys, they're kind of just like run at you melees for the most part. So if you're feeling like you're getting aggressed on too heavily, especially as Yorick, who kind of has like a more sit back play style anyway, you're probably just not respecting necessarily their position in lane. You just have to think about how close you have to be for them to be able to get on top of you, and you have to just basically maintain just outside of that range. If you get too close, they'll punish you for that, basically. That's just kind of how they work.
See, I find myself wondering if he's almost too scared of them right off the bat.
That's kind of what it sounds like, or that he'll eat a little bit too much harass right off the bat and then feel obligated to play back because he's really he's worried about getting crushed once he gets hit.
Yorick kind of has to play like that early anyways. He's kind of one of those characters who has this big spike at 6. And honestly, though, if you're landing your wall on any of those characters,
You should be all right.
yeah, you're instantly safe. So landing your wall against any of those three would just solve your problem.
I mean, it's also building up the 3-stack ghost and landing an E as well, and somebody like Volley Bear, that's gonna. It's not like he's gonna run away from those really quick, and it's not like he's clearing them on his own instantaneously either, while they're just smacking him for damage, and that's a significant amount of damage early. So I feel like maybe playing back too early or not playing around Q's uptime might be a bigger issue with this, because like if he's worried about getting tossed or something like that, he can move forward a little bit, start to back off. He can wall on himself to keep Volley from chucking him. It's not like Volley can pass to the wall, and he can pass to the wall anytime he wants. So
it may not. Something I've seen in a lot of replay reviews is that it may not necessarily be that they're too scared. It might be that they're too aggressive early as well, and they're pushing the lane, and then lane gets pushed in the enemy's favor, and then the enemy plays into that and uses that to their advantage to keep them off. But now he does say they eventually get pushed under the tower and dove. But if you're playing too aggressive early, or you're not respecting how the wave should be played, go back, I don't know, 5-6 episodes at this point where we're really talking about the top lane, or even just talk about CSing and moving the lane around. You have to know the ebb and flow of the lane and what you're going to be doing. And if you're really struggling against Darius, Volibear, Garen, Kled, Heimerdinger, go and look at their kits, watch some videos, I don't know, watch some other people play, maybe try to play those champions and figure out when their power spikes are, so that you can have a better understanding as you're doing the weekly challenge and narrating, saying, all right, well, as soon as Darius is 2, he has a huge spike on me, I need to play safe. As soon as I hit 5 or 6, I can suddenly counter into these champions. There's a lot of little things you can do to prepare for these matchups outside of just emailing us and hope that we can answer the question.
Yeah, and I'd like to just mention too, you guys have talked about the laning pretty well. When you go back to buy your items, make sure you're buying the right items. So if you're against Darius and you're losing and you have 1100 gold, don't just buy a Sheen on Yorick. Pick up Ninja Tabby right away, because that'll help with what Todd said about staying out of his range, and it'll also help you with damage. If you plan on surviving, if you're really far ahead in lane, then maybe it's the right time to pick up the Sheen. If you have a bit more gold, maybe it's time to pick up a Phage, because then you can hit a minion and move out of the way.
Yeah, I think people really fixate on specific items as being the things they have to get irrespective of the circumstances, and that's really just not true. There are a lot of times where it's like, yes, I need that item eventually, but something else is more important right now. Like a common thing that happens out of mid lane, for example, is that an AD champion or an AP champion will go up against an AD mid laner. And people are so used to rushing, let's just say Morello's, for example, and everything, that they still just go for that item no matter what. And whereas they really easily could just get the Seeker's Arm Guard. Yes, it delays that specific big item power spike, but getting that Seeker's Arm Guard helps so much during the course of the laning phase.
The reverse there is the Hex Drinker for that same matchup, just in the other direction, because a lot of people forget that one. I was thinking about like a different. So I haven't played top lane in a while, but my initial thought, because it's my best top lane champion and because I feel kind of comfortable against these guys, is Gnar. Like I know he's kind of coming back to the meta. Like how would that matchup go for anyone who might know it a little bit better?
Todd knows. Todd hates Gnar.
Can you repeat the matchup, please?
Gnar versus those kind of champions, those ones that run at you. But
Gnar versus run at you, yeah.
As soon as he gets Frozen Mallet, he's invincible. That's pretty much what happens. Like seriously, you get Boots 1 and you get Yorm's Fist, you complete Frozen Mallet, and you keep the slow on any of those guys, and you're infinitely out of their range. And if they flash on you, you just E out. So
I think we found out that Gnar's Darius's pull range is longer than Gnar's auto attack range.
Yeah, you still have to get a lot of time in on the matchup, because you can't just pick up Gnar and play him into any one of these guys and win every time.
Mitch
you have
is
to
playing him, so it sounds like he can.
I
know, but
no.
This
is just my default in top lane. He's my best top laner for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just thought it might be an idea for another champion to pick up.
I wanted to add that he says he's struggling against aggression, and he's talking about kill pressure, and it makes me kind of think that what might be happening is he might be going for farm and taking free harass when he goes for the CS, So there might be a little bit of some practice need, some decision making that might be need to made around, going for the farm that's safer while, the other person's either farming or preoccupied or just you're out of their range so you won't get harassed. And then maybe learning to give up that more risky farm because all it takes is going for a CS too far out against somebody like Darius, and that can be a death. That could turn into a death.
Well, cool. I hope that helped you out, Yogurt, because I think there's a lot of information there for you to digest.
Gogra, can you please try and say it right?
Yogurt.
God damn it.
The tallest one writes in, is that like the odd one? Because I like the odd one better. I think you need a name change here. You're trying too hard.
Wow.
And if it's not, you're
trashing the listeners. What a
yeah.
dick.
You're trashing on the adjective one as names?
Yes,
or you
exactly.
think that odd one is very tall because I don't believe he is.
He's not. I've met him in person. He's actually a very short one, and he looks odd. His name fits him perfectly. Maybe the tallest one's name fits him perfectly. Maybe this guy's like 7'3". Who knows? I mean, you can make fun of my username. It's Ponophobia. I made it back when I was like 12 years old, and I've kept it forever. So, I mean, go for it. The tallest one writes in, I've been playing a lot of Skarner and generally have a great time. Once the game goes mid to late, I'm pretty sure of what I need to do. In the early game, though, I'm really struggling to be meaningful. Skarner farms brilliantly, and I find myself counter-juggling a fair bit, but his pre-6 ganks feel pretty terrible. I know, from you guys, that power farming to 6 is pretty subpar jungle strategy these days, but given how fast its clear is, would it be worth it for Skarner's game-changing ultimate? The power farm to 6.
Sean, you are always like a big Skarner fan, irrespective
I love
of his
Skarner.
state. Like you're always like, no, Skarner's the best, and I should be playing him.
I mean, Skarner does. He falls in that category of more champions that run at you, and I play a lot of champions that run at you, and he does exactly that. The thing is, like, Skarner's ganks really aren't that bad early. Especially with EQ stun, if you can get up to them, it's almost the same as if you were playing Udyr when Udyr was strong and you run up and you stun somebody. As long as there's somebody in that lane with you to pay attention and go for it, you should be okay. It might just be the routes that you're actually going to gank with that instead, because I think Skarner would be perfectly fine to roll with and easily climb up. Well, easily climb up through gold, no problem with it. It just depends on I guess how you're playing it, and a piece of it would be like I wouldn't necessarily first pick Skarner, especially if the enemy, like somebody on the other team, is picking up Janna or an Anivia or
the game where Janna's getting picked every game.
Right. Well, and I mean, if Janna's not banned, she's usually getting picked, and I don't always pick. I love run at you champions, but depending on whether or not some champion that can keep me from getting at you is picked early, if I'm first pick, I'll probably pick something that's a little bit more variable depending on what they might pick, because it's not worth just grabbing that champion and banking on only being able to do something awesome for your team when flash is up.
Yeah, there's like basically I would say 4 tiers of gankers. So there's the A tier, which have crowd control and a gap closer. So people like Elise. Then there's the B tier, which people who don't have gap closers but they have crowd control. That's Skarner and Warwick, and Warwick kind of has a tiny one, but I'd put him in there. Then there's tier 3, which is like people with just a gap closer. So those guys can use like funky routes to get in behind you. So that's like Lee Sin. And then you've got no crowd control, so like Kha'Zix, Master Yi. So Skarner's good at ganking. I think the problem is there's a big difference between power farming to level 6 and farming and then taking advantage of overextended laners or squeezing in ganks between your pathing. If you go into the game and say, okay, I haven't even looked at the lanes, I don't even know who's on my team, who's on the enemy team, I'm just going to go and get level 6 and see how it goes. That's not going to work. It can't work anymore. You just can't get far enough ahead. But you can go into a game, and this is what I often do, even on like Warwick and Sejuani. I want that ultimate, but I also want to be able to pressure the map if someone is overextending or if someone is easily gankable. So I'll just throw out an example. If I have a Riven top lane and they're up against even a Gnar, I know if I snowball that matchup, I'm probably going to be able to carry the game with the Riven. So I'll start on my bot side, do a full clear, gank early for the top lane, back, do a full jungle clear again. I'm still up in XP, and then maybe gank top again. So you just have to make sure you're squeezing in the ganks here and there. You can't just farm anymore. But
and you don't need to force ganks either.
No.
That's something that like I think everybody. There's so many people that absolutely feel that it's hey, I cleared this portion of the jungle. I have to go gank at this point because there's nothing else I can do right in this spot. And if lanes aren't pushed up, is scuttle up, go take it. Are the river fruit up that you can go take just to deny to the enemy laner if they can somehow push ahead and take it later when you're not around or something like that? Can you go and ward their raptors? Can you go and ward for one of your laners? Is now a good time to back and go get an item so that, you know, by the time you work your way back around to the side of the map that you're on, the wave might be pushing back. These are all things to keep in mind. You don't have to force a gank if it's not there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. And maybe to play a little bit on, or to talk about your team fighting struggles, Skarner, since he has such a good ultimate, and yeah, if you have flash, you don't have flash, it doesn't matter. Try to look at the map in those mid to late game fights, and when you see someone out of position without teleports, let's say you see their enemy vein bot lane, and you guys are all around top, engage on them. It doesn't matter because you're going to be 5 against 4, things like that. That's how I try to use Warwick to my advantage, starting team fights.
Your job at Skarner isn't... I know when you're playing solo queue, everyone's going to build around you as primary engage with Flash ultimate, but that is so unreliable because Flash is only up every few minutes. Your job isn't necessarily always to run in and Flash and grab the AD carry and pull them back in. Sometimes it's to pull somebody out of the team fight so that your team gets, is able to do what they need to do. Look at what your team comp needs. Do you have a whole bunch of assassins that can blow somebody up real fast? Sure, grab that primary target that isn't a support and kill them. But is your team comp more of protect the AD carry and let the AD carry blow somebody up because they can tear through the tank, like Beaver said earlier? Potentially you are now ulting that enemy assassin who's coming, and you're saving your ultimate for that enemy assassin who's jumping on to the AD carry, or you're pulling away some kind of fed tank. Now, generally speaking, you're not going to pull the tank away, but it's an option. Like your ultimate is now an option to be used rather than a de facto flash engage ult somebody, because you do have a stun too, right? Like you could save that ultimate and use that as a clutch turnaround in a team fight. How many times have you guys I heard it this weekend, oh my god, such and such still had his ultimate up at the end of the team fight, because they don't need to fucking use it right away. And so you don't need to be doing the same thing. Try to, if you're not finding success with what you're doing, try to go back in and reanalyze how you're doing it, what you could do differently to have a bigger impact in those team fights.
Yeah, it's such a great point. Yeah, if you're the one who's fed, then flashing on the AD carry is fine. But if you're behind or even, then protect who's strong on your team, because suppress ultimates are the best peel in the game.
I do want to point out, if Ardent Sensor is the most broken item in the game, and Janna's the one who's giving it to everybody, there's really nothing wrong with killing her right off the bat.
Sure.
Yeah, if you're going into a 5v4, it doesn't even matter if you pull the tank, you're gonna blow them up. So just get onto anyone. That's what I do with Warwick. Like, they're very similar, Warwick and Skarner. If you can start an odd man team fight, just start it on whoever.
Yeah, just don't pull that tank into the team fight. It's also possible for you just to grab somebody and hold them right there as well. You don't have to move the person as Skarner either, because you don't want to pull the Maokai into the team.
You can still cast your abilities.
What, as you're being? Oh yeah, as they're being pulled.
When you're pulling someone, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can still spam Q and shit.
So fucking go to work.
So good luck out there, tallest one. Grow much taller. Be a sturdy, steady tree.
Grow into a large, tall lad.
Play Ivern.
Yes. Our Dizzle writes in, I am so tired of AP carry supports. Hey, Marine, did you change your name and write in?
Oh, no, not at all. But I can see how you might think that.
I'm Silver 2 mid and ADC player, and it seems like I almost always get a budget mage support like Lux or Annie, who doesn't build some of the best support items. They will buy gold generating item and just full AP. What do you do when you are playing with a support that is building like a carry? You adjust your playstyle to play with those people. That's what you do. If you are playing only into those, if every time that you play this game, you have a Lux, Zyra, Vel'Koz, Brand, Annie, you are suddenly not playing 80. Or you're not playing Kog'Maw, Tristana. You're now playing, Lucian, Draven, potentially Jhin. Jhin is fine, especially down in silver too. You're playing all these like hyper aggressive Misfortune. Misfortune's really good actually, into a lot of these. You're playing these hyper aggressive marksmen that can take advantage of your hyper aggressive lane and potentially take towers and roam on the map. Play into what people are playing. You can't force someone to bend to your will, because you can't go in there and be like, you need to pick this support. They're just going to make that person play worse if they're not playing something they're comfortable on. So unfortunately, you have to change and try to get comfortable on something else.
If you're upset that they're not warding enough in a way that is satisfactory to you, get the blue trinket as early as you possibly can and start dropping those little wards all over the place and everything. In that type of MMR, a lot of times people are really inattentive to begin with. So just you getting vision all over the place where you would like it is going to solve some of your problems, and the enemies are going to run right past those wards.
My advice would be to last hit as best as you can so that your support can't steal any CS from you, so that they have to bend to your will.
I guess like the other thing that we need to consider here is that like we're operating on the assumption that the support players know how to play these champions. This guy might just be complaining that he's getting stuck with bad players. I mean, like you can't make somebody like if your top laner is bad at playing top lane or bad at playing League of Legends, it doesn't really matter. Like you can't do anything about that. And so in that regard, it's really no different. Like a decent AP, like a decent budget mage is going to figure out how to contribute despite being on the low economy role and everything. But a bad player is still a bad player no matter what you do.
Alternatively, what if mid silver has figured it out and just blowing up the support lanes before they can get their sensor? Maybe that's the meta. Maybe that's the meta shift, guys.
Like I said, shields are just extra health, so you got to really just deal more damage, and seems like it's not easy to do.
Well, there you go. Good luck, Ardizzle. I hope you climb it by the end of the season. Signs point to yes. By the way, it's SINES. Signs point to yes for all of you that enjoy good jokes. Looking for some advice on a late game jungle? I've been rolling with Warwick, mostly following your advice from prior episodes. I enjoy playing him and he seems to fit my playstyle, but I seem to struggle after the laning phase. I cannot seem to carry well enough to get the win consistently, and I have to perform worse later in the game. How do I best capitalize on being ahead with Warwick? What should I be trying to do? And could you make some build recommendations, since I might be overlooking things?
So if you have a lead on Warwick, what you want to do is figure out who's weak on the enemy team and kill them over and over and over again, because that's what's gonna snowball the game. So if you're top,
if they're not paying attention, sit in bushes close to them. Just do whatever you got to do to murder them, ruin their day.
I can see it in both of their eyes. They're like, if you're getting ahead on Warwick and you're not carrying the game, you're doing it wrong.
I can see where he's coming from though, because sometimes it can be overwhelming when you're trying to learn a character. Especially you seem like you're new to Warwick, but yeah, people that are behind are always low, so your W passive is always up. If that's bot lane, then dive them. If it's top lane, dive them. Go back to a couple episodes and listen to us talking about diving if you want to hear about that. But basically, that's what I would suggest. Don't try and help people that are behind. That's not how you're going to win.
Listen to the
just got to punish people who are behind.
I mean, if you know you're ahead of the enemy jungler... Go ahead, Todd.
I don't know if I agree with that entirely. I mean, I would say that has to come with a bit of a disclaimer. I mean, if somebody's down a little bit and like you're strong, like you can help them turn their lane around. The only time you should like abandon somebody is if they're like 0-3 at 10 minutes or something.
So what I usually do is I say because when you're jungling, you get a lot of time to watch people lane if you're using your F1 through 5. So I'll usually watch lanes early, and it's easy to tell who's the better laner in pretty much every lane. So if they're even or they're the better player, I'll definitely go help them if they're behind, because I think to myself, if this person had a lead, would they do better than the enemy top laner if they're both top laners? If the answer is yes, I will help them. If the answer is clearly no, then what's the point of putting your resources into that person?
That's why nobody ever ganks for Adam.
It's true.
That's not true. He plays Karthus.
Yeah, it's totally not because I for
it. I know. Beaver earlier is like, hey, there was this really aggressive bottom lane, and I was helping them out to win the game. And I'm like, well, we play aggressive bottom lanes, and he hardly ever comes down here. We're getting aggressed on. I'm like, okay, Beaver, you do that. Sure, buddy. Okay. And then everyone's like, hey, you should ward more, or you should do this. I'm like, yeah, you guys really do that. Man, you guys really listen to your own advice. Every game.
I was the one saying you should ward more, so let's be fair.
Well, that's fair. Yeah, I wasn't necessarily picking a beaver with that one, but no, other people in here were like, you should do this and do that, and I'm thinking the entire time, I'm like, this is when I always want to call all of us out for all having really bad habits, being like a do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, it just comes with doing it over and over again, getting habits, good habits, not bad ones like mine.
Buying red wards that Sean never does, and potentially
I buy them
too.
all the time. I bought one last game, baby. Come on.
Sit in his inventory the whole game.
One.
Yeah, one.
Well, one.
I probably I wouldn't even say probably. I average more red wards as a marksman than you do as any other lane.
He's got one already. You can't buy another one.
There's one on the map.
Do we want to talk about his items quick? I know he said
Tiamat into something.
He built Tiamat first, which is good, and then you build Tracker's Knife because you said of the weekly challenge, and that's good. I mean, Red Smite's also just as good. If you think you're gonna snowball the game, I would get Red Smite personally.
I'm
really
a huge fan
undervalue
of
Red Smite.
Red Smite's it's crazy on Warwick because your ultimate applies it a bunch.
It's crazy on Warwick, and it makes Warwick's already awesome at 1v1s, and it just makes you even better at them.
It's true.
Yeah.
And then you finish the Titanic. Oh, you do your boots, tier 2 boots. I like that. And then if you always finish your Titanic after that, I think that's wrong. Oftentimes, if I'm behind or even, and like they have a Fed Oriana, I'll buy a Spirit Visage first. Or if it's a Fed AD carry, I'm going to buy a Thornmail or Randuin's Omen first. Because I don't need the damage, and by having the damage, it's not going to deal a whole lot if I'm not snowballing. Because Warwick has such high base damage already, the Tiamat's fine, and you can finish it third item is usually what I'll do if I was behind.
Yeah, it's reminiscent to a lot of people buying Bramble Vest out of top lane. You have Tiamat. All you're buying Tiamat for is just to clear the jungle more quickly so you can go do Warwick things. So just sit on the Tiamat for a while and then build other items that'll help you do more, like get tanky and then duel.
It depends too. Like if I'm snowballing like crazy, if I can pull 3 kills out of nowhere in the first 10 minutes or something like that, I'll go Tiamat into like
Trinity
Phage or Sheen, get a T-Force. T-Force, Titanic are between the two of those. If you can get them within like 25 minutes or before that, you'll crush everybody you run into.
Dude, you say
it's disgusting.
You say Trinity Force, but Sean builds Trinity Force on anybody and everybody he can. That person could be an AP pure AP champion, and he's got Trinity Force in his inventory.
Trinity Force Ivern, baby.
I've never done that in my life, ever.
Oh, okay.
Never build Trinity Force on Ivern.
Oh, dude, I got wrecked. My computer restarted. It blue screened.
Oh.
Damn.
Oh no.
Uh-oh. We're back though.
I recovered my Audacity up to now, but I can't add anything.
Everybody else that's going on here, you just couldn't hear what we were saying to Todd. We were going, because Todd can't do anything. So Todd's just not going to say anything for the rest of the episode, and I'm probably going to end it there anyway because Todd's back. So I hope signs point to yes, that is perfect for you, and I hope you can make something out of that. If you need any more information, go ahead and write in and let us know. We'll try to answer that personally rather than on air. But that's going to be it for episode 483 on the Trinity Force podcast, guys. Hopefully we have 6 people again on Wednesday. Hopefully we're all back here every single week. Todd's going to wave to the camera because Todd can't say anything because no one in the MP3 can hear what Todd has to say because it's
wave to the microphone.
He just said wave to the microphone. Out there. All right, guys, that's episode 483 of the Trinity Force podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you all on Wednesday. Have a good evening. Peace.
Kisses.